Obviously, getting ready, big week, homecoming week on campus. Gator Growl Friday night, the Hall of Fame inductions on Saturday. I know we're honoring a lot of our Olympians here on Saturday, so big weekend for us here on campus. Should be an exciting time. I know Gator Crowd's done an amazing job so far for us this year in home games, and excited to see everybody back out there again this week.
Yeah, hey Dan.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't echoing. Yeah, so things kind of, we didn't get a ton of time with you. It was kind of harried at the game, understandably, you're on the road. I wanted to ask a couple, reflect on the game the other day for a sec. I mean, obviously, at Florida, losses are taken hard. This one has been taken particularly hard by the fan base. And the questions about a few of the things that we kind of touched on the other night, but if you could readdress, for one, the decision to stay with the clap count and not go to silent, and also the use of timeouts was something drawn some consternation.
Yeah, I mean, the snap count's our snap count. We've used it. Most people use it around the country. Every team we've played has used it here in the swamp. So that's something we're looking at with our guys, but something we've used and most teams around the country use. So, but it is something we're looking at of how to make sure we're communicating everything the right way. Timeouts in what way?
Well, at the end of the half, you addressed it, but you felt like...
Well, anytime you get in a situation at the end of the half, we have the ball in the 12-yard line with under 2 minutes to go on our own 12. They have 3 timeouts. So obviously, I view that sometimes, especially college football, you're in an advantage on the defensive side of the ball right there, right? You pin them in deep. You have 3 timeouts. That was a big change in the game against them last year. We pinned them deep, under 2 minutes left in the half. We used all 3 timeouts, forced a punt, and we ran the punt back for a touchdown and really turned the entire course of the game. So you're looking in that situation. By the time we get the ball into range up to about the 30, there's about under 30 seconds left in the half. At that point, we'd been playing pretty good defensively. And so at that point we said, hey, we're in a position right now we can take it in. Instead of trying to take a risk throwing the ball down the field. We'd been playing pretty well defensively. And I thought we'd move the ball fairly well. Some mistakes hurt us. So we were going to take it into halftime after getting the first downs to get out of the half and not let them pin us in and force a flipping field position.
I didn't count them up, but I'm here. Anthony Richardson played 6 plays, I believe.
Okay.
Why was his workload? Do you feel like he should have a bigger workload going forward? Did he get dinged on that play?
No.
And maybe?
Oh, no, he was fine.
Do you feel like his workload could increase?
We'll look at it as, depends on our game plan from week to week and how practice goes.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
David Waters?
Coach, how would you assess the lack of downfield passing and stretching the field from Emory this last game and some this season before this last game as well?
Yeah, well, you look at the last game. They played us. They were playing a lot of one high, soft, deep coverage.
Okay.
So schematically, you're not going to, if they're just bailing everybody really deep, you're not going to just launch it into coverage down the field.
Okay. Back first season here after the Missouri game, you referenced wanting to win and compete with everything, and including thumb wrestling with a lot of passion. Mm-hmm. Is that same sense of urgency and motivation missing from the program right now?
Not at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. I promise you that.
Thank you.
Thomas Golkin?
Yeah, Dan, I'm going to kind of follow up along those lines. Whether it's right or wrong, a lot of the fans feel like maybe you guys are kind of stalled out at that New Year's 6 range. What is it going to take for you guys as a program to push through and get back to that SEC title game and a situation where you can win it?
We were there last year, so
But do you understand the concerns about the trajectory, given that you were there last year and now you're 5 games in, looking at a 3-2 record?
No, I mean, each year is independent of itself. You know, a lot of different factors go into things from one year to the next. There's a lot of football still to be played this year, so we'll see how this year plays out.
Mark Long.
Hey, Dan. Curious on your assessment of special teams. I think your punter's been pretty fantastic, but it doesn't look like you guys have been very dynamic outside of him, and certainly you've lost. You could say you've lost 2 games because of special teams.
Well, you certainly look at different scenarios in it, and even the punting situation. You know, I think we've had opportunities to pin people in deep with our pooch punts, and we haven't been able to execute that. You know, that was a huge component of it. PAT field goal. You know, it's always, I love everybody to let you look, say, hey, it's special teams, but there's a lot of different things. There's 11 guys on each individual play that are on the field. So I can point to a different guy. If you want to tell me, I don't like saying, hey, that was this guy's fault on this play. But we know what it is, and we coach it and try to get it fixed. I mean, I don't need to exemplify it publicly of where it is, but it's not just one factor in all of those different things that go on, special teams wise. There's obviously different things that go into it. You know, but I mean, we had a bunch of penalties. We had penalties on special teams last week. We had 3 penalties on special teams that end up being huge plays. 3 different individuals responsible for each penalty. You know, and they end up being big factors in the game. So it is something that, you know, we just got to work on and continue to improve. And that's on me to make sure that we're playing at a disciplined level.
And speaking of the discipline, how personally disappointing, that's not something we see out of Dan Mullen teams to look somewhat unprepared or to be undisciplined.
Yeah.
How disappointing was that for you?
You know what? It really is, you know, to me. And that, I mean, I take it personally that's on me. You know, that's my responsibility as the coach with everything in this of us. And when you go perform and you make the mistakes that we made, you know, I mean, you look at that game, right? And they're, you know, one of the things you look at. I mean, Mark's done a good job. They're a top 25 program consistently. I mean, I believe that. I think, you know, watching them, he took over a program, built the program the right way, very similar to what we did at Mississippi State back a long time ago. Has built his program around the right way. You go play in a tough environment against a good football team, and you make the number of mistakes that we make, you're not going to win football games. And, you know, that's what we address as a coaching staff of what are we doing to make sure, like we do in every week, in everything in life, whether it's big or small, when something happens, you can't change it. I mean, it is what it is. That's what happened. So let's look at what happened. Let's look at what was good. Let's look at what was bad and how are we fixing it to improve it. You don't sit there and mull over the past. You sit there and say what happened. What was good, what was bad, how do we fix it, how do we get better, how do we move on? And we've talked about that both as a coaching staff and as a team, and find ways to go fix those things because, you know, you guys could probably check it. I don't ever remember a game as a head coach where we've had 15 penalties in a game before. You know, I mean, I've coached a bunch of games, so maybe there's one skipping my mind out there, but I don't think I've had one with that many penalties before. So that you know, that is disappointing for me.
Nick Delatorre.
Hey, Coach. Going back to that the last drive before halftime, you had 3 timeouts. You could have called a timeout before the punt. Is that something you even thought of doing? Because I mean,
well, no. Again, you're looking at a situation where when you're back to the wall, you're trying to get out of the half with under 2 minutes. You're trying to get out of the half sometimes, right? I mean, go back to last year's game. That's how we won the game.
Sure.
So.
And then my other question was about the penalties, which you already covered. We're good.
Yeah.
Baker.
I'll share this with you on the timeouts. If they were punting from their own 5-yard line, we would have taken the timeouts. If we had started the possession at the 40, we probably would have had a different mindset.
You're a pretty aggressive coach. And
every game's independent. Oh, I'm with you. And every game's independent of itself, and you're always kind of looking at situations right there. of where you're at, you know. And in that situation, we're looking for explosive plays. You know, I think it went back to, I don't know, I think David asked the question. You know, we went out there looking for explosive plays. I think Emory had to check it down a couple times. And all of a sudden, we really hadn't moved the ball very much, and the clock's under 30 seconds. It wasn't like we weren't going to look to take a shot. Two of those plays we called to see if we can take a shot down the field. They bailed everybody back. We checked it down. You know, now you're looking at the clock, and you're a play away from having to punt, and they potentially get good field position.
So in your mind, if you call a timeout before the punt and then get sacked, now you've just created a situation
well,
where
now we're punting. They got the ball at midfield or they're running the punt back like we did last year against them. So a lot of that is in just how the flow of the game's going. You know, as you get into a different game and how it is and where you are on the field and comfort level of where you're at on how to make plays.
And then the last play, it seemed like the passing windows are certainly short down there. Did Emory make the right read on that?
Yeah, you know, you're looking. I mean, they're dropping 8 guys into coverage on the last play of the game. And, you know, one of the things you talk about when people are going to drop 8, there's always going to be extra guys in coverage. And within throwing lanes, there's always guys in lanes. So, you know, one of the things you want to look at is when you think you got a window, you rip it in. Don't wait for something better to happen. You know, and they're in a drop 8, dropping everybody into coverage right there, and he tried to let it rip into that window, and their kid tipped the ball away and made a nice play. You know, I mean, in those situations, you know, you don't want to be backed up. We went first and goal at the 5 to second and goal at the 14 with a penalty. You know, kind of changes the scenario.
Sure, thanks, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just kind of continuing on that line. Other than the penalties, the last 2 drives when you're in the red zone only get the field goal out of it.
Yeah.
Was that lack of execution, play calling?
Yeah, well, you're looking at the second to last drive. We're in the red zone. We convert actually a 4th and 2 to go in to score a touchdown, but there was a penalty. So that caused us the kick. And then the next drive, we're down inside the 5-yard line. There was a penalty. So I think it's more that, probably. I mean, we have 15 penalties. You know, that's on me. I mean, the penalties are on me. You know, I mean, it's my responsibility to make sure the discipline this team plays with and executes at a high level. But that's I'd love to say it's more than that. You go watch the film, and it's pretty obvious.
Sure. And then my other question, what was kind of your overall assessment of the offensive line's play as a whole?
Good and bad. You know, there's some good things. There's some bad things on there. You know, false starts not great. A couple holding penalties in there that weren't great. Couple of missed blocks here and there. Not, you know, that's with everybody. But you know, at other times, I thought, you know, at other times we were moving the ball. You know, it was kind of one of those nights where you're just watching and it's hard to get in rhythm. You're like, oh, here we go. We're moving. Penalty, back it up, or a missed assignment, bad play, and you're just out of rhythm.
Ryan Haley?
Coach, that actually kind of tied into the question I wanted to ask. The offensive line got a lot of really just praise for the first 4 games and playing really, really well. And this is kind of the first between a little bit of health and then cycling through some rotations and then those penalties, kind of the first adversity they've faced. I don't know if they've really had the chance to practice, but if you had the chance to like speak with them and see how they've responded or have a suit.
Yeah, I'm sure they're excited to get back out there. You know, I don't know. I guess I'd look at the praise early in the season or what it is. You just see it's a long season. You got to play. You got to perform for 12 weeks in the regular season. So I don't give too much. I'll give praise after the season if we do really well to somebody, good and bad, and how we handle it. So, but It is. We had a bunch of guys miss time with practice, miss time with injuries during practice last week, but, that's part of playing, and that's one of the things that makes the SEC a little bit different. It's not the one game, it's the game after game after game after game that you have to play, and how that wears on you.
And then early in the game, Damian Pierce broke off a few big runs. As the season goes on, are you going to stay committed to that, like running back by committee, or are you going to be more willing?
Well, each guy's brings something a little different to the table, and so there's certain plays I like certain guys in there for, and then there's other situations where each guy runs a play a little differently, so it kind of brings a little something different to the table, and those guys. Those guys done a pretty good job. I don't have any complaints with the running backs and how that's going.
Thank you.
Buddy Martin? Buddy, you're there?
I'm here, sorry. Yeah, Dan, sorry. I want to get back to Pamela's question again. Understand the noise obviously was a problem. It wasn't the only thing. Do you practice with noise for games now? Okay, so you did that before that. I'm sure you told them. The question I have about the snap, it came up in several interviews, some reference to the snap. It appeared as though, to the amateur's eye like me, that sometimes the linemen were expecting the ball to be snapped sooner, and they went and snapped later. Was there some of that going on too, with the young center?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So he was not. And then Emory made a remark during his press conference that he was going to do a better job of being louder. In the signals. Is that something that was an issue?
Yeah. Well, it's something we look at everything at each one, at every little issue that goes on there, and we work to get those corrected.
Okay. And final question about field goal teams. We've seen this happen a number of times, including all the way back to the kick six, where the personnel on the field, obviously blocking, they're not exactly jet speedsters, and not linebackers at tackling. You had a situation with that bitch in the butt there, unfortunately, but with the missed tackles. How will you change that, if all, in the future in terms of getting somebody who's faster and a better tackler on that field goal team in case there is a block?
No, we practice going to try to tackle the guy, and those scenarios happen sometimes.
Thank you.
Cassidy?
Hey, Dan.
Hey.
I kind of wanted to follow up on that. I was wondering if you could just kind of explain for those of us that may not understand, how difficult or easy is it to actually switch to a different cadence in a game, or is that something that has to be worked on in the off season? Is it just easier said than done?
You can do it. Yeah, it's obviously it's much easier said than done. There's a lot that goes into what we practice and how we do things. So, but we're going to continue to look at each one of the different scenarios and everything that happens, and we'll go improve on it and coach it up and get it fixed.
And then following up on David's question a little bit, how do you keep that thumb wrestling attitude, so to speak, prevalent when you're coming back off of a hard loss to a noon game against a team that,
well, you're a competitor. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess you're just a competitor. If you would have gone out with a run with me this morning and we got within the last half mile, I'm going to sprint and beat you. And that was just going on a nice morning jog. If you walk with me down the street, you probably see I'll walk a step in front of you because I don't like being behind people. I like winning. And so, it's a heck of a lot. And that's just going for a walk down the street. So if you go play pickup hoops in a friendly game of pickup hoops and it gets close, don't be surprised if you get an elbow in the eye. And that's just lunchtime hoops. So it's certainly not, I promise you this, it's certainly not hard to get motivated to go play an SEC game. I don't care whether we play on Friday morning at 6 a.m. in the parking lot or we play at noon in the swamp. I don't care. We'll go play. So, there's certainly not going to be any lack of motivation or desire or want to go out and win the game.
That was an attitude that was very easily seen in Felipe. We saw him do that a lot. I used to see him race Kyle and Emory to practice just to get in there first. do you have those guys that sort of are your leaders now that can make sure that that's injected and that the team is staying?
Yeah, I think everybody has their own little competitive ways that they show things and that they do things. And everybody kind of probably within a program shows their competitiveness in different ways. But I certainly don't think we have any lack of competitors and competitiveness on our team.
Just last one from me, status of Kair for this weekend.
Yeah, we have a bunch of guys that are banged up, so I'm not going to get into injuries for this week. We have a bunch of guys that'll be questionable, so it'll be too long for me to go through it all.
And again, can I follow up on your competitiveness?
Yeah.
So with that said, TV cameras caught you smiling, almost like really enjoying yourself as you walked to do the handshake post game with Mark. Okay. Were you smiling at Mark, that you got me here, or what? I mean, it just seemed really off and out of character for you.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if you keep a camera on somebody, everything you can still shot whatever thing that's going on in your mind. In my mind, at that point, I'm thinking about everything that went on during the course of the game. What we did well, things we have to improve. I'm thinking of how I want to talk to the team, how we got to build it back up. We have a whole long season to go play ahead of us. I don't know. I mean, you could probably get if you keep a camera on me the entire game, you'd probably catch me doing all kinds of things that probably would be like, boy, I wonder why he's doing that at this very second. So
could be worse. You could be Urban, but I was just curious. Thank you.
Goodell?
Hey, Dan, I know you mentioned about coverages, a lot of guys dropping this week, and that's why you weren't testing downfield.
Yeah.
But in the season, Emery looks like he's thrown 12 passes of 20-plus yards out of his 134 attempts. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious what the trust level is there. You mentioned him having a cannon of an arm, but how much do you want to use?
Really good. I trust him throwing the ball deep down the field.
Thank you.
We'll finish up with Edgar.
Yeah, and I'm going to have my USGA rule book handy when we finally tee it up one day. We keep talking.
Well, my son does, so he knows it, so he can kind of. I don't. He quotes it right there. So, yeah. The issue is, I understand my limitations on the golf course. Now, walking to the ball, I may beat you there, and walking to the next tee, I might, because I can beat you there getting there. But once you put the club in my hand, I don't know. My limitations might start to catch up with me a little bit. I'm not for lack of want to beating you, but
I'm very limited.
Lack of talent might come into it a little bit.
So Dan, what is? I wanted to ask you this one, and then a concluding question. How do you handle that kind of frustration on the sideline? It's clearly got to be immensely frustrating to watch all that. I mean, do you have techniques that you like? I mean, literally, are you you're going to
like a breathing technique and all that? One thing I talk to our team, and what you have to do is you have to really look at things. Okay, when you're frustration, just when you're frustrated with things. Okay, frustration's an emotion. Okay, and a mental state. And how does that frustration? Frustration can cause negativity and point you in a bad direction. Okay, frustration gets people to do things they don't want to do, or do things, like I said, once it's done, it's done. You can't change what's already happened. Now, there's nothing that we can do that can change the results of Saturday night. No matter what we want and how disappointed we are or frustrated we are, you can't change those results. So you can use that frustration and the emotion of frustration, and a lot of times it turns into a big negative. Okay, and then you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, you had one negative, and the frustration caused another negative. And once the second negative's happened, you can't change that. That's happened. You still have to move forward. So the biggest one to me is use the frustration to motivate you. You got to take the frustration and use it to motivate you to find ways to improve. Use it to motivate you to get better, and not let the frustrations create a big negative, because the negative are only going to add to the problems that you have. And so, no matter how frustrating it is, that, you know, I mean, sitting, you know, there's the emotion of frustration, and letting that turn into a massive negative is not usually going to fix the problem. Taking that frustration and using it as a motivator to try to get better is the best way to fix whatever the problems, what's causing that frustration.
I mean, is that the message? Because the last season, I know this is a different year, ended on a down note. And now this year hasn't started out maybe as well as you would like. So what's the message? How do you make this season something that you guys look back on proudly?
Well, it's a long season, you know. I mean, last year was a unique year with a totally different team. This year's a unique year with every year is such a unique year. They don't tie. One doesn't tie into the other. They're all very, very independent of each other. You know, now I know I'm the head coach, so to me, they can, you know, you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, this year, and some of the guys are on the team this year and last year. So very, very independently. There's some great highs last year, some great lows last year. I'm sure this year there ends up being the same thing and with guys within the team. But, you know, for us, like we talk about it, it's a long year. There's a lot of football still to be played out there. I can't tell you, you know, I mean, we'll know what this year is going to be like and what this team and the result of this team is going to be like when the year ends. And there's a lot of factors that are going to go into success during the course of a year. And a lot of factors that go into, you know, that you're not being successful. And, yeah, at the end of the year, you'll see both.
Appreciate the time as always.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week. Go Gators.